Hey there, 2%ers. This is Jael McLean, creator and host of the 2% podcast. We are doing the season finale today. I'm here in downtown Lincolnton, North Carolina. I'm here with Center Stage Studios, and we are going upstairs to film the final episode of season 1. I want to thank everyone who's been a part of this project, who supported me. Thank the viewers, subscribers, everyone who's liked, commented, shared, and supported in every way. Thank you, thank you, thank you for having this season be so successful for the 2% podcast. Come on, let's do it. In transformation, when 2% of a population begin to think in more liberated and spiritually open ways, a new level of consciousness will awaken, bringing about a new reality for the total population. Join me, Jael McLean, confidence coach, business owner, musician, health and fitness enthusiast, transformational instigator, and your host of the 2% podcast in creating a new reality of spiritual awareness, confidence, and authenticity. Hello and welcome to the season 1 finale of the 2% podcast, your source for empowerment, expansion, and elevation. Today, we're joined by my friend, internationally respected trainer, program designer in transformational learning and leadership, and CEO of Align Leadership, Dawnelle Hyland. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here with you, Jael, and thrilled to be here on the finale. What an honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I tracked you down through a good friend of mine. We're writing a transformational fitness course currently, and he had studied with you back in 2019 and did a program design course. And so that's how I got a hold of your name and reached out to you.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about your background and then your school as well.
Sure. So I'll start at the beginning. I took some very deeply transformative training, it was working with me both personally and as a leader. And it made such an impact on not only my life, but the life of the other people that I had impact over. At the time I was teaching. So my students, my colleagues, my family, and I saw the power of the work and really decided to dedicate the rest of my career to that. So it just so happened at the time that the school where I was teaching was having some major challenges in relatedness, both among the students and teachers. So much so that, the state was looking at her school as a potential to take over because the achievement was just not where it needed to be. There was fighting in the building literally every day. It's just a lot of chaos. Yeah. And we became eligible for federal grant to transform the culture of that school. By that time, I had taken all parts of the transformative training that I mentioned and had moved into a leadership role in the school's site-based committee. And essentially, when this grant opportunity happened, I moved into a role that was created for me to really drive and direct the transformation of this school's culture and some other schools in that district. So that's how I got my start.
It's incredible.
Loved the work.
Yeah.
And I'm an educator at heart, educator, teacher, which to me means to call forth or bring out. It's not about putting something in, it's about bringing out our wisdom and our talents. Oh. And transformative learning allows that to happen. So I decided to continue down that road and really carved out a path where I've been creating transformational programs and facilitating them across a wide range of domains for close to the last 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. It's so awesome to have you. So the theme for this season has been, what are you experiencing out in the world, and then how can we create an impact?
Yeah. that's such a wide question, right? It's such a big question. I want to start by saying that whatever I'm experiencing and whatever any of you are experiencing, those of you who are listening or watching this, is a result of what we're thinking and who we're choosing to be. Because who I'm choosing to be and what I'm choosing to think will drive what I put my focus and attention on and choose to see. So for me personally, I've been experiencing a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth personally as I look at what's occurring, I would say factually in the world and what is my role with that. So a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity. What I'm observing and noticing and listening in the conversation of the world, I'm observing what I'm going to label as a massive unsettling, just a massive, when we look on the news and we see people going into schools with guns, or communities or neighborhoods. Happened recently in Raleigh. I live in Durham, North Carolina, right next door, so to speak. We see that. We see insurrections on the Capitol building. We see uprisings. I just saw yesterday uprising in China where people are protesting. They don't want to fall under the guidelines of COVID anymore. They're tired of it. We're seeing it in Brazil. So there's this unsettling that's happening. And this may sound strange to some of our listeners, but I actually see it as good news because I feel like what has been suppressed, the beliefs that we've been living out of, really tying back to our sense of our own freedom and sovereignty, those are getting fleshed up, so to speak. They're being brought to the surface. A lot of emotion, a lot of beliefs, and we're getting to bring into our attention what has been there all along.
Yes, and I had that exact same thought with some of the things that we've seen in our country the last few years, and the fact that this stuff has been there. I just didn't necessarily see it. Mm-hmm. And so that's the opportunity we have is that, hey, these things have been brought to light now. The racism and some other things that I've experienced and witnessed, they were there. They just were in hiding. They were being hidden a little bit better, I think, than they are currently. Yeah, absolutely. And so when anything is brought into our awareness, and I think we're undergoing a collective awareness right now as a humanity. Not every person, of course, and the 8 billion of us who live here, but on this planet, but to a great degree, we're coming into a collective awareness. And then at the level of us individually, we then in a new awareness get to have choice about who do I want to be, and how do I want to live my life moving forward into this new, I see it as a moving into a new level of consciousness, which is, I know what this show is about. When 2% of a population get to a certain level of consciousness, the whole starts to move with it. Yeah. And I think the consciousness that we're moving into is the consciousness that we really are all innately connected. Yeah. And we've been pretending like, or living our lives as though we are separate. Yeah. And there's a new awareness that maybe that's not the case. Yeah, that we are all connected. Yeah. So tell me about, you and I had talked about previously, the illusion of separation. Yeah. This is a huge conversation. It's a huge conversation. And where I will start is, in order to even grasp, it's said a lot in transformational circles, we are one, we're connected.
And yet we don't always have the experience of that, right?
Yeah.
Even if right now, if I'm looking at you, if I use my physical senses, what I'm seeing is somebody who has blonde hair. I have dark hair. Yeah. We have different sizes, different heights. So our physical senses are designed to see separation. And to really start to understand connection and unity really requires having a philosophy that recognizes that we were all created out of the same, the same force, I'll call it. Some people, and that we all have a divine nature. Mm-hmm. We were all created as divine, emanations.
Beings, yeah.
Some people call that force, that creative force, God. That's how I work with it in my own life. But I hesitate to use that word sometimes because people will humanize God, like a white guy in the sky with a beard and backlighting. That's not, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to that life force energy, that love, that unconditional life force energy that permeates all things.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
that we are all
in us and
a part of
us,
and that we're an emanation, kind of a download of that.
Yeah.
And part of the process of coming to know ourselves as that is going through the separation. So what I mean by that is if we start at a pure level of consciousness of our divine nature, we don't know that that's what we are. That just is. And then as we kind of move through our lives, let's say before we were born, we had a sense of that pure nature. That's all we knew. Then we come into our lives and start to gather experiences that we use through our physical senses to show us that we're separate. Well, the only way we're going to know our divine nature is to go through what it isn't, so we come back to really having a deep inner knowing of what it is. Does that make sense?
I'm following.
Yeah.
Are you guys following?
Yeah. So it's kind of like an analogy I can use is, if all I've ever known in my world, if all I've ever seen is light, I have no sense of what dark is.
Yeah.
Until somebody comes and turns the lights off. And then I go, oh, wow, this is dark.
And I've heard it in transformation put like a fish in water. The fish doesn't know it's in water until it's taken out of the water.
Yeah. Kind of like that. Yeah, so the myth of separation is that that we are separate, that we've somehow decided that our identity is separate from the one. And that plays out in our interpersonal relationships with one another. We have to, mark our territory and, be right about the way we see things. And, our way is the way. It's the best way. And you're, because you don't see it my way and you don't think the way I do, you're somehow wrong.
Yeah.
And that, at the level of identity, if I'm identified as a separate, I'm going to call it a narrative or a story, if I'm identified as anything, there's a limit to that. If I identify myself as white, a white woman, and you're identified as black, if I'm not seeing the commonality and the unification, I'm just seeing what's on the outside and all the things I've made up about what's on the outside from all my past experiences, then we're not connected.
Yeah. And I can see how we're creating the experience of separation. In my, my thoughts, my speech are creating me having that experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to break for a commercial right now, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Guitar Wishes, where dreams with strings come true. The area's largest guitar shop and NAMM Top 100 winner, Guitar Wishes of Lincoln. We carry your favorite Gibson, Fender, Martin, Taylor, and Epiphone instruments. We're an authorized Music Man, Sterling Vintage, and Yamaha dealer.
Welcome back to the 2% Podcast. I'm with Dawnelle Hyland today, and we're talking about the illusion of separation.
Yes, and I think before the break, we're talking about how we really are. If you choose to believe this, we all are of a divine nature. Yeah. We were created out of that, as an emanation of that. And the emanations look differently, but there's really that unifying part to all of us. I think in practice that can be difficult for us to experience. So I want to share an example, if I may.
Yeah.
This is comes from a movie, but it's based on a real life situation that happened. So for everybody who's watching, I want to just go ahead and tell you, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. Because in order to illustrate the point, I have to tell you what happens at the end of the movie, but watch it anyway because it is deeply moving. So this movie is called Best of Enemies, and it is a situation that happened. The movie is based on a real situation that happened in 1973 in Durham, North Carolina, which is where I happen to live. At that time, even though the United States had voted to desegregate schools, some 20 years beforehand, Durham schools were still segregated. So there were the white schools and the black schools. And at the time, and this is depicted in the movie, a school burned down. And it happened to be a black elementary school that burned. So the leaders of the community, the government officials were charged with, okay, we've got to take care of this. Where are these children going to go to school? And they didn't want to make that decision themselves. At least that's how the movie depicts it. So they hired an outside consultant, a guy named Bill Riddicks, to come in from Raleigh, North Carolina, and lead the community in making its own decision. Now, you can imagine how divided the community was, given that the schools were still segregated. Yeah. So what did Mr. Riddicks do? He created a committee, and guess who he put as the chair of this committee? One chair was a guy named C.P. Ellis, head of the Ku Klux Klan. Just imagine that. The other co-chair of the committee was a woman by the name of Ann Atwater, and she ran an organization called Operation Breakthrough, which was essentially, as I understand it, an organization working to get equal rights for black people at the time. So these two were co-chairs of this committee, and it was their job to go through a set of experiences with the community and come to a decision about what to do about the schools. And as you can probably imagine, the two of them could not have been farther apart and had a lot of, angst and upset and even anger with each other. And this gets portrayed in the movie. So the movie portrays what the community went through to arrive at its decision, but it also really hones in on the relationship between these two, between Ann and CP. And one of the things that occurs in the movie is that Ann finds out, and this happened in real life as well, she finds out that CP has a child who is severely handicapped. So much so that this child cannot be taken care of at home, and is, in a residential, they called it institution at the time. I don't like that word, but for lack of a better word, that's where the child was. And Ann happened to find out that CP and his family were behind on the payments to have their child stay there. So she happened to, this is where she did her volunteer, some of her community work. She happened to be there when they called them and said, you have to come get your child. She pulled some strings, and through her involvement in the community and got it set up so that their child could stay in this place.
Wow.
So fast forward to the end of the movie. They're in a big, what looks like a gymnasium. Half the room is half the audience in the room is white people. On the other side are black people. Committee's sitting up at the front, and they're one by one voting on what to do. We come down to the final vote. The vote is in C.P. Ellis's hands, and it is in his hands which way this is going to go because the vote was tied. So he gets up at the podium, and he says, it's been great to get to know some of you all through this process. And then he said, I want to show y'all something. And he pulls out his Ku Klux Klan membership card. He said, I want to tell you, when I got this card, I cried. And I come from a family where men don't cry, but I cried because for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged to something. This was a real brotherhood, and it really is. It's a brotherhood, and I felt like I belonged to something. And I was struggling at the time to feed my family. And when I came into this brotherhood, we're all for each other. So I felt like I belonged to something bigger than myself, and I felt like I was supported. He said, but I've got a problem now. I've got a problem. This card and our motto is not for me, but for others. And he said, my problem is there's been a whole lot of doing for others going on in this community through this process. And it's not just been white people doing for white folks. It's been black people doing for people too. He says, I've got a problem because, they made me president of the Ku Klux Klan. And man, when they made me president, I was over the moon. Poor little C.P. Ellis, president of something. But as president and as a member, I'm supposed to hate black folk. He said, I got a problem because I don't believe we should be hating black folk. I don't hate black folk. Wow. So I don't have a need for this anymore. And he takes the card and he rips it. And he turns to the consultant and he says, Mr. Reddick, I vote yes for the schools to be desegregated. And to me, it is such a beautiful example of how when we allow ourselves to let go of whatever we've made up about these small identities we've associated ourselves with, whether that's being white, being black, whatever the identity is, because we have a whole lot of experiences that tell us what this should be. We have a whole construct of what these identities that we have decided about who we are, what these identities are supposed to be. And when we allow that to release, just to relax a bit, then we can start to see that we've got more in common at heart than we do otherwise. And that's what happened in this movie. I mean, he was able to experience maybe what they've told me about black people is not what's really going on through her kindness.
And it's so relevant because, like I've said, I'm experiencing the most extreme, we're just at extremes, the most extreme that I've experienced in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And what a place for two people to come together, because like the work of transformation, we learn about this need to be right. And what if we could let go of the need to be right and the need of how we have it, and this person can say, hey, I'm willing to be wrong about how I have it, and I'm willing to learn about how you have it and the experience that you're having, and this person can do the same. Now, when both parties are positioned and they're unwilling, they're stuck on how they have it. I'm right, you're wrong. No, you're wrong, I'm right. Mm-hmm. There's nowhere to move. Like, there's no other moves to be made from that place.
Absolutely. So there are two things I want to say about that. One is, if I could have those of you listening and watching this get anything, is to realize that polarizing can actually be our greatest gift. Because it can, and I'm going to say how in a minute, but it can move us. We're on this, our soul is on this journey of moving back to knowing our true nature. Yeah. So if we can use it for that, then that's where its power is. So that then we don't have to look at it as wrong. We can look at it as a gift. So that's one thing I'll say. And what you're describing is, communication, right? If I can just let go of the way I have it for a minute and hear where you're coming from, and that's very powerful. I want to take it a step further and take it to, if I'm disturbed by something you're doing or saying or even how you're acting or being, that is such a golden opportunity for me to look at what it is within me that you're showing me that I have completely dismissed and resisted. Because whatever that is within me is what's keeping me from knowing my true nature. So I know we were...
and I've heard, since transformation, I've heard it simply put as if you spot it, you got it.
Yes.
And I got to see a meme that said, the other person, you didn't make me mad. I made myself mad through you. Yeah. And so it's not, transformation has it that it's not about the other people. It's, I have the opportunity to look at how am I the source for what I'm experiencing, and if I'm seeing it, then it's in me too, that I can only recognize that which is already in me.
Yeah.
And so if it's something that annoys me or bothers me or, whatever about another person or I don't like about them, it's really, I get to look at, well, where is this in me that I don't like this part about myself, or I hate this part about myself, or, I have not been able to love or accept that in myself. So it's really never about the other person.
Absolutely. There's another saying that I've heard, there is no out there. There is only my consciousness projected out and reflected back to me. So let's make this really practical, and let's walk through some steps on how do I deal with this. Okay. If somebody is, showing up in my space, doing something, saying something, or acting in a way that I just, I have energy on it, negative energy, I'm repulsed, or I have some kind of emotional reaction to it. What do I do if I really want to experience my divine nature and self-realize as that and come into greater unity with the whole of life? What do I do? Yeah. So let's walk through an example right now. Are you game?
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So tell me something that either in the past or right now is showing up or has shown up for you that you just really went, oh, I don't want any part of that. I don't want to see it.
Yeah. So definitely right now it's the racism that I'm experiencing.
Mm-hmm. So let's refine that a little more. What is it about that really, that really disturbs you?
It's the downgrading and degrading of other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if that's the thing that's uncomfortable for you, that's what we want to lean into. Yeah. So what that says is that you're holding in your own consciousness guilt for having downgraded others, for being the downgrader. Yeah. So our souls are storehouses of consciousness. And so it's showing you're holding in your soul guilt for having at some point been the downgrader. That is in your being right now. That's actually good news.
And that's what's telling me the trigger is there.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have any effect if it wasn't in my being right now. It just wouldn't. Our our consciousness and the thoughts that arise out of that are like, they have electromagnetic particles that are literally will attract into our space or into our deeper into our presence that which we're holding. And that's good news because it gives us the opportunity to release it and therefore know more of our divine nature. So here's how we do that. So the first step is identify what it is, which you've just done. You started with, well, racism really bothers me. And then you refine that to, well, what is it exactly that bothers me? What bothers me is the downgrading of other human beings. Yeah. And then the next step, so that's step one, identify as clearly as you can what it is that's disturbing your peace. And then secondly, embrace it. Rather than run from it, embrace that if this is disturbing me, it must be in me. And the only way to truly embrace it is to look at it impartially. We do not tend to fully embrace things that we judge, right? Yeah. All of us. We're not going to embrace something that we have a judgment on about ourselves. We can't allow ourselves to just be with it. So that's a big step right there. Just be with it that there is a downgrader living in me somewhere,
Yeah, and this is the work. This is the work of transformation, that when I experience something and it bothers me, it's not about the other person. It's an opportunity for me to look at, where is this in me and where am I the source that this is showing up in the world?
Absolutely. Yeah, and transformation, since you brought that up, transformation, the way that I work with it in my own life and with those that I work with is ultimately about having us experience and know our divine nature, which I'll call self-realization. And when I got that piece wasn't present for me in the first part of my transformational experience, but when I got that piece later, everything moved. So if what I'm here about is fully knowing my divine nature, everything is shaped out of that. So I just wanted to say that as a bit of a side note. But going back to this process, the embracing of what is living within me is where the power is. Because once I fully am with it, I have what one of my mentors, Dr. Ray Blanchard, calls, zero gravity on it. I bring it to, I don't have any energy on it at all. Then I can then let it go or give it forth. And what I'm giving forth is any thought of downgrading. In this case, could be whatever the situation is that's showing up in front of you. If you've got somebody who's lying in front of you or stealing in front of you or, whatever somebody is doing, you identify what that is. You embrace that it is within you to the point where you have no energy on it. You can be impartial about it. Then you can give it forth. What you're giving forth is your guilt, and you're giving forth the thought that I'm going to do any harm to anybody in this way ever again.
And so, you said you have a very different definition of forgiveness.
Yes.
That I would like you to share.
Sure. And I just, kind of spoke into it there. A lot of people see forgiveness as I am letting you off the hook for something you did to me, which really kind of, even in doing that, I'm identifying myself as a victim. And there is no power in that space, and that's a whole other conversation. So that's how a lot of the world has forgiveness. I'm forgiving you for what you did to me. I'm letting you off the hook. I'm being, exhibiting grace. I have giving forth as it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. It has to do with what am I holding in my own heart in my own, backdrops of my mind that it's time for me to release. So I'm literally, if you break the word down, forgive, give forth, I'm giving forth the thoughts, and I'm giving forth anything in my being that would have me want to harm another person. And if I really embrace it and let it go, it's done. It can be done in a moment. Yeah. And I work with and practice in my life A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles calls that the holy instant. It can be done. And sometimes whatever the issue is will keep showing up. So I don't want anybody who's listening to this and who takes this process on in your life, I don't want you to get disturbed or frustrated if the same issue comes back. Just take it deeper if it does. And keep doing that until you have a deeper understanding of it, learning about it, embracing of it within you, and then can release it.
Yeah. There's definitely work that I've gotten to do where I broke through things one and done. Mm-hmm. And then other things that I've gotten to come back to and nope, not there yet. Oh, I thought I forgave. Nope, wasn't there. Yeah. And there's more healing there.
Yeah.
Is what it tells me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, we're here in the 2% podcast in the finale of this first season. First of all, I want to congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
Is huge. I because we've talked, for the audience who doesn't know, I'm taking a moment in your show and acknowledging
Thank you
for, she stepped out there. She had it on her heart to open this idea that when 2% of us as a humanity can come into greater union with one another, then everybody rises.
Yeah. And
so I want to acknowledge you for taking that step.
Thank you.
And you did it and you learned along the way and you did it without having all your ducks in a row. You just went for it.
Yeah.
And that's what is allowing us to be here together in this space and really have these conversations that can move the world. So in this finale episode, if we can really really start to embrace, there is no out there. There is only my own consciousness that's, stored in my soul being projected out to me and mirrored back, or being projected out from me and mirrored back to me for the purposes of me releasing it so I can know more of my divine nature. And when I know more of my divine nature, then that's what I see in you and you and you and you and all the yous in my life. Yeah. I've got a really quick other story.
Beautiful. Let's do it.
I'm going to tell you, I'll make this quick, about, being able to see past the behavior when I'm really to a point of, really starting to know who I am by nature, by design. So true story, a number of years ago, some of you may have seen this on the news. It was several years ago. A person walked into a school in the Atlanta area with a gun. Yeah. And this was shown on CNN and probably many news channels. Walked into the school. The receptionist sitting there basically talked him out of doing what? Did you see this?
I did, yeah.
She talked him out of what he was coming in there planning to do, which was shoot. And she just kept, from what I remember, she just kept saying things like, "Baby, you don't want to do that. I know that's not on your heart." These weren't her exact words. I don't remember her exact words, but that was her come from. I know this is not, she was essentially saying to him, I know this is not who you are. Yeah. And you can imagine the stand that she took in that moment and the utter faith in the unseen, because all of her physical senses were telling her,
this is going down.
This is
about
going
to
down.
happen.
This guy's going to come in here and shoot a bunch of people are going to die today. So being able to see past the behavior and see the light when everything our physical senses tells us is that it's not that, that's the gold.
Yeah.
That is the gold. And,
and it's so counterintuitive to what we want to do, which is, at least for me, like I, in the past, lived based off of evidence and not realizing like I'm creating the experience that I'm having. Didn't know it. So when it was crappy, I was like, oh, well, I'm having a crappy day or whatever. Yeah. But I didn't know that I was creating the experience that I was having. Mm-hmm. And I kind of forgot where I was going to go with that.
That's okay. Well, while you think about it, let me just say this. What's so, just moves my heart about what we're talking about here and this work of transformation is that once I can see you and anyone past behaviors and see the light, that's what starts to emerge from that person, because I'm actually, and in it emerging in the other person, we've already said there's no out there. So we're emerging together, because I've done the work internally. You've come into me as a gift in my life to show me what I'm holding guilt for in my consciousness so that I can release it. And as I release it, I can see your light and my own light. And we are literally rising into our knowing of our divine nature together. Yeah.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
Yes, and I can shift the experience that I'm having through choosing to live out of this space.
Absolutely.
Rather than living out of evidence that, oh, this person's this way and they're this way and I'm this way, and we don't have to live from there.
That absolutely. And as you do that, as all of us do that, everybody around us begins
to shift
and come into knowing the purity of their own hearts.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. It's something to really take that in.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing conversation with you today. I'm so glad you came. Thank you so much for helping me finish out season 1.
Absolutely. I was thrilled to be here, honored to be here, and just, really encourage those of you who are hearing this, if this has resonance for you, take on this practice and see what happens in your life. Yeah.
Well, I know that you and I will be in touch. I definitely see myself landing at your school next year in 2023 to study experiential and transformational course design. Where can everyone else reach you?
Sure. So there are a couple places you can reach me. I'm going to give you a couple links, and I think Jael's going to put these in the comments as well. So if you want to get my newsletter as well as a case study where the process that I went through today was used in an organization and how it worked, as well as giving you the steps of the process, you can go to, I made this for all of you in the audience, go to tinyurl.com/lead transformation. If you are interested in designing your own transformational program that is deep and powerful and can be used in organizations or offered to the general public, I have an academy called Transformation by Design Academy. To get on the wait list for that, you can go to tinyurl.com.
Ooh, I better sign up.
/world-class transformation.
Awesome. And then they can also find you, Dawnelle Hyland on Facebook and Dawnelle Hyland on LinkedIn.
That's right.
As well.
I would love to hear from you. I appreciate more than anything direct messages. If you heard something in this podcast that really resonated for you, I'd love to hear what it is and how you're using it. That would be really delightful to hear that and hear how this and have Jael hear how things are taking hold in the world through the work she's doing here.
Yes. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and I hope you've enjoyed season 1 of the 2% podcast. Please continue to like, comment, share, subscribe, and again, would love to hear from you.